What's up, guys? Things got surgical on the Mustang. So I'm going to take you around, show you what we're doing. But first of all, basically the video is just going to be about some floor pans and addressing some issue areas. One of the biggest problems was the passenger side, like frame rail and apron and everything. It's all one assembly. It's where the fender mounts to. The shock tower's there, so a lot of structure there as well. And I had to cut that whole thing off and replaced it. So, but it is officially done. And obviously in this video, like all my other videos, it's just gonna kind of like take you back in time and get you caught up to where we're at right now. All right, so ignore the mess. I've got like every tool in the world just laying all over the place because I've been using just about every tool in the world. As you can see, I've got the front driver's side and passenger side floor pans done, and I didn't have to do as extensive as a repair on this side. That was actually a full passenger side floor pan over there. So basically the last piece is what goes from the floor pan up to the firewall, and then I got to do both torque boxes, but those are going to be ordered very soon. All right, so the other thing is this is the entire assembly that I'm talking about. So not the 2x4, that was separate. But it comes all the way up here to the core support. Everything is welded on. Nothing just unbolts on these cars. If you have one of these, you probably know what I'm talking about. It goes all the way back to the firewall, and it's welded to the firewall down to the subframe down below. So this whole piece had to come out with the shock tower, the engine mounts, all that stuff. This little sway bar mount, everything is on this. So it's super important to make sure that that does not move whenever you go to cut that. And I do explain this later in the video. So again, I'm gonna kind of go back in time and show you how all this stuff works out. But same thing on this side, the little floor pan to the firewall, that little filler piece, I'm gonna have to get it. And then we are putting in a passenger side torque box, even though this car did not have one. So should just strengthen it up a little bit. So let's go ahead, go back in time and see what I had to do to get all this stuff done. Probably one of the funnest parts, dealing with all this. Lovely. Pretty extensive rust here, but fortunately it's not all the way to the back like the other side. So I'm gonna see what I can do just to replace this front part because the back is nearly perfect. So now the biggest thing is just cleaning this all down. I like to expose all the bare metal just to make sure that wherever we're doing this repair, it's not a super rusty thing. We're gonna have good thick metal to weld to, and this repair should never fail. So we're gonna have to clean up stuff like this. This is where another piece was laid up on here. All right, so the next thing is when I'm trying to figure out where I need to make my cuts on the new piece, I always use reference lines like, you know, this little line right here is where the frame rail goes. So I'll make my measurement from here on out to extend past all the rotted stuff all the way down to the very end, because down here there's still some pinholes right here. So I want to make sure that I get well up on the side even here and go all the way over there. So I will make my measurements from here out, and I just kind of draw a line that I think looks good. From the front all the way back here is 18 inches to this flange. So I use measurements like that to figure out how I'm going to lay out my new piece. All this stuff that goes up here on the sides, I'm getting rid of all that on this section. So it'll pretty much be an entire front piece of the floor pan here. And then I think that I'll have every bit of rotted stuff out of the way. So, all right, so here's what I just talked about. So I have all the way to the outside edge, this little 90-degree lip right here. We're gonna keep that because that welds onto the other side right in here. So it comes up on this side, the inner rocker, if you will. All right, so over here, I've marked out exactly what I was just telling you about. So I've taken the same measurements from the edge of this little lip right here all the way out, and then did the same thing over here and drew as straight of a line as I could, and then rounded off the corners. That's one little trick. If you're doing sheet metal and you have a pointed corner like this, sometimes it can get a lot of heat in it, and then you'll just blow through and get a giant hole. So I always round off the corners if you're gonna be MIG welding this stuff. Basically, I'll take that shape I just cut out, I'll lay it down here, I'll trace around it, and then that'll give me my cut lines for where I need to get rid of all this stuff. So then it's just a matter of prepping this area up and getting it ready to be welded. So I'm gonna do all this stuff on a time lapse that I just talked about, and then hopefully that gives you an idea of how to lay this stuff out, because I feel like it gets pretty accurate panels every single time. All right, guys, so it's that point in the build, and this happens. I mean, it's just part of it. But you're reaching the realization that there's gonna be some major surgery. So the torque box is gone. The floors are gone, which obviously that side over there is back. But so basically we're gonna have some major surgery here. And it's going to start with cutting off this entire side and taking care of all the rusted out spots below that. So basically it's gonna get this whole entire side. So the other thing is that the wheel arches on the inside are completely shot. So you can see down there, the end of my ratchet, there is a huge hole, and that is obviously not what we want to see. So what's going to have to happen is, and since the quarter needs done and everything like that, for the sake of the customer and time and all that other stuff, and just, you know, making sure that, because the one thing I like to do is I like to make sure that it makes sense. I'm not going to, you know, go in here and make a little patch for this and go in here and make a patch for that, when I can just cut this whole quarter off and then put the new quarter on, and the whole thing is fresh. It honestly ends up saving the customer some money, and it ends up being a better quality result, less body work to finish it out. So that's the route that we're gonna go. So basically, since we're gonna be cutting off a bunch of stuff, and I mean, literally this thing's gonna look like a skeleton, like it's gonna look like a parts car. But since we're gonna be hacking it all up, we need to leave as much structure back there as humanly possible. And we'll have to weld some kind of bracing in here. Basically, that's just gonna lock this in place, like front and back. And then we'll have to obviously mount something in here at an angle to give it some structure up and down. And then we'll probably weld a couple more just to make it extra sturdy. Because basically we wanna keep this in the same exact spot while we're removing this. So, all right guys, so first things first, you wanna set this thing up on some jack stands. And normally just put them in a smart place where you know that you're not going to have to like be drilling spot welds underneath it and then have to lift it up and do it all over again. So just pick a place that you think is going to be good. I think I'll be good right there. And then this one on the driver's side, I have positioned backwards just a little bit, and it's going to get me more in like the meaty part of the subframe right there. So that way you don't want to, you know, come too far out, because then if you rest the whole car way out on the front end of it, it can twist it. But of course we're going to be bracing this stuff as well as we possibly can to try to prevent that. So then you come over here and you just take everything that's going to be in the way out of the way. You just want to make sure that whenever you're going in there, you're making your cut, that you can just easily take that piece out, because I'm just going to cut a majority of it out first, and then that gives me much easier stuff to work with as far as like, you know, if I have it cut off right here, then I know all I have to do is work on this little piece instead of this big, gigantic, bulky piece and try and, you know, normally I find that if you section it up into smaller sections, it's way easier to get the spot welds drilled out and take a chisel and just eat them right off there. So I know I talked about reference points and kind of, you know, marking some stuff out and just making sure that, like, whenever you put the new piece on there, that everything's going to go in the exact same way. But that was if you can get an absolutely perfect panel. And we know that if you have done this in the past, you know, you get a quarter for this thing and it never fits like it's supposed to. So, or very rarely does it fit. All right, guys. So I started by cutting the old section out, and I'll put a little time lapse of how I did that. But basically, I just take big sections and just kind of break the whole thing into pieces. And so that way I can get closer to these areas that I need to prep up and, you know, drill out any spot welds, stuff like that. So I will take you to the other side and show you now how close we're getting to fitting this. It is not welded down right now. But so basically this was my reference mark I made, and so I can tell that this definitely needs to come in. And you can tell that right there too, because if that would come in, then all those gaps all the way around there would be filled. And then this flange, which is technically bent a little bit that way, but when I bend that back, it will rest because it's supposed to be at a perfect 90, and you can see it's a little bent. Same thing with down there. There's two flanges that are about the same distance apart. So you can tell that this whole thing needs to come in a little bit. And then as far as the height, I think it's actually fitting pretty good. So basically just getting this thing fitted, and it does have to go that way. Like I said, I mean, if you push this over, then it'll line everything that we need over here. So it just needs to come over maybe a ½ inch. All right, guys, so I've gotten everything welded in place here, and I put this upper support bar across here so that I would know exactly where the top of the shock tower was supposed to go, so everything lines up perfectly. And I've got everything welded across the backside, and then the last piece was the piece that goes right here, which is right here. All right, guys, so we got everything mocked back up, and the gaps are all looking pretty good. And remember, there's no stops back here or anything like that. So the panels are all just kind of like loosely laying there. But the main thing is just to make sure that everything is kind of like within the realm of adjustability, because obviously you put the fenders on, they are adjustable. You know, there's some movement back and forth to get the correct gapping that you're wanting. And what I'm seeing right now looks like it's perfectly fine. Sorry, my camera's freaking out because of my lights. It looks like it's perfectly within that realm of adjustability. I know this corner needs to come up, but again, there's plenty of room. I'm not gonna worry about getting it perfect because obviously we still have to do a crap load of work on this thing. So I just wanna make sure before I welded everything officially in place that everything was gonna look good here, and I am very happy with the way this is looking. And I already know somebody's gonna comment and say, well, the gaps aren't even right. Well, this is not even bolted down. So there's plenty of movement back and forth. And the big thing I was looking for was just to make sure that everything was gonna be in the ballpark, and we definitely are. All right, guys, I do wanna thank you for watching this video. Now we're gonna kind of transition into some shop stuff, because the paint booth is actually, it's probably over halfway done. So I'm gonna take you down there and show you what it looks like right now. So ignore how crazy messy this shop is right now. But you come down here and you've got the paint booth. Obviously there's no lighting in here yet, but hope you guys can see this all right on video. But I have the 45-degree angled wall put up there, and that's gonna be pretty much just mocking a normal paint booth. That's where the lighting goes. And then there's gonna be more lighting down the sides right here. So that way, if I'm, you know, painting over here, and let's say that there's a light strip that goes right here, if I walk in front of it, then the light up above me will make up that space, and there shouldn't be any kind of like shadows being cast and all that stuff. Obviously, the last thing is just to get the exhaust stuff all set up, do the wiring, the lighting, and finish the drywall. But it is a very spacious setup. It is a 24 by 16 by 10. I did a 10-foot ceiling in there just in case somebody brought me something that set up a little higher. I want to make sure I could get to that. So yeah, I should be able to get just about anything in there. All right, guys, so I will do a separate video of the whole paint booth, like whenever it's completely done, just showing you how it's all set up and everything. But I just wanted to give you a little sneak peek at what it is. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching the video. I do want to say, if you're not subscribed, I would appreciate it if you would subscribe, like the video, do all that kind of stuff. So it just helps grow the channel, and I do appreciate that. All right, guys, thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.